Welcome one more time. Thank you very much for being here. Today, my guest is very special, my wife. So, thank you for being here, for taking this time to chat with me. And I think, I don't know if you want to introduce the subject, but there's something that as we mature in our marriage, we start finding out through the seasons, the good seasons, the hard seasons, difficult seasons, bad seasons, we start realizing what are some of the things that could really fracture a marriage. And we've gone through some of those, and by the grace of God, we've been able to get through, but we've learned a lot. And I think when a hard situation, when you're facing a hard situation, one of the best ways to deal with the problem, whatever you're facing, is to think about or to think, what is this situation here to teach me? What am I going to look like on the other side of this? And in marriage, we can't forget about that. When we have difficulties in our marriage, it is very important to think about the things that you're going to learn, what the marriage is going to look like on the other side of that problem, whatever that problem is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with the difficult seasons we've experienced, and we continue, right? Because there's always going to be challenges as we're married. But I think it's giving us a perspective, we grow and we learn as we go. And the two things that I think have touched us a lot is, like you said, finances. Also, we recently had a fifth child, and with that, I think even, with any new child, it brings some challenges that we have to overcome together, and it kind of makes things rocky. So I've definitely felt challenged this last season in our marriage, and not only because of the pregnancy and our family growing, but then my father recently passed away. And I think all these things and changes help us grow, but then it's like, okay, how do we adapt to our new reality?
Yeah. When you mentioned finances,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a big, so one of the podcasts that I listen to the most is The Ramsey Show. It was a friend of mine a couple of years ago in 2020. He told me about it, and it was very new to me. But ever since he explained to me what the podcast was about, or the essence of the podcast, I remember that it just caught my attention, and it hasn't let me go ever since. But I always did it when it comes to the content of the podcast and all the teachings. I always found it as something that I was very pulled towards. I was really interested in everything that was happening around financial peace, but I never decided to actually do it in our lives because I thought it wasn't necessary, or just because I thought some of the things were too radical, or for some reason, even though we know it's going to rain, we don't prepare for rain.
For sure.
So that's one of the things will be finances. That's one of the things in I think statistically, the number one cause of divorce is money problems. And the second will be religious views, which will be the second thing we'll talk about. But we can't, simply because we have a good thing going on in our marriage, things are going on well in our marriage, it's really good to keep those statistics in perspective. Because if you are not having if you're not in on the same page when it comes to those two things, it can really cause damage to your marriage. And a lot of times, or I guess most of the times, statistically speaking, it can bring it all the way down. And nobody wants that. And you don't plan on that ever happening. However, it's better to prepare for things before they happen. And I know that's kind of obvious, but for some reason we don't use a lot of common sense when it comes to those things. So when I was listening to this podcast in the, I guess, 2020, 2021, 2022, I never took it seriously until we had a situation in our marriage where finances was a big thing, where we were struggling really bad. And things didn't go very well for us because we never prepared. We always thought that God will provide. And I think that subject is, I would love to talk to, for example, a priest about that, God providing, because I am a firm believer that he will provide. But I once heard someone say, God would feed the birds, but he won't put the worm in the nest. So I love that Jesus uses that example of birds, that they don't worry. They just know that, they just go out and they find food, but they do have to go out, and they go out very early in the morning, right? So there's a lot of things that we have to do that is up to us, that God will provide, but that we have to do as well. We have a lot to do.
I think that kind of aligns with like the Bible verse that the chosen uses. The fish, you bring your fishes,
yeah,
and the bread,
yeah,
and he will multiply, So I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, it's something that, going back to our the problem that we were having, had we done things differently, had we worked harder a little bit or a lot harder in our finances, or had been more on the same page with our finances, the situation wouldn't have hit us the way it did. Now, this is the good thing about it, is that, going back to what we were saying at the beginning, is how is this situation going to help me build character? How is this situation going to make our marriage better? And during that time, you and I made a decision. We said, hey, we had the opportunity of doing things better. We know that there's some things that we can't control, but there are a lot of things that we can control, and we didn't control them. So what can we do so that this doesn't happen again? At least controlling what we can control. And on the other side of that, which fast forward to where we are today, being on the same page financially, to our decision of being very simple, having a simple life, not being extremely minimalists, but definitely having the mentality of a minimalist. We don't need so many things, doing and having are never going to make you happy. It's more about becoming, where you're going to find true joy. So we learned that, and fast forward to where we are today, living a more simple life, letting go of a lot of things that were really hard to let go of, but having that financial peace and being on the same page and talking about purchases and having one bank account and talking about everything that we do, it has really transformed our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And, statistically speaking, our marriage is going to thrive. I'm not saying that if you have money problems, your marriage is going to fail, but it can really cripple it. And you can have really bad times, really bad seasons, if you're not on the same page financially, and if you're not working towards the same dreams financially, and if you're not looking for a financial peace, whatever that means to you. I mean, we've found a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it depends also on the family's financial goals, right? Because, like you said, like if we're looking at it from a more simple living life, like in our perspective, it's okay. It's like we've learned to be like, hey, do we really need this extra thing, or do we really need to go to all these places, or can we just go to the beach today and it's free and it's beautiful. But I think it's been a growing experience for us, and we're still learning. But it's so funny. I don't really know, like, because you went like way back to when you started listening to Dave Ramsey, and it's really funny because I'm still like, we're still like working on. I know you're still working on me on little things that
Yeah.
we learned from his podcast, but I'm definitely on board with a lot of things now. And I know at the beginning it was a challenge between both of us because I'm like a super Amazon shopper, and you're like, why are you buying all these things on Amazon? But as as we've grown, I've learned like, okay, do I really need this? I ask myself that, or am I just buying it to buy it? Or is there any way that I can borrow something from a friend or for this event, things like that. So getting creative. And I think that brings you joy when I cooperate and when we're together, walking together in that same goal. And we definitely had that season in finance was very hard, aligned with other problems we had during that same season, because for some reason, like sometimes, I'm sure this happens to many marriages, but when you're having one problem, it's like another one comes, and then you're also having a health issue, and then it's all these other things.
Yeah, it's like Murphy moves into your spare bedroom. You know, the law of Murphy. Everything that can go wrong will.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why I mentioned at the beginning, we know that it's going to rain, but we never prepare.
And at the beginning, I really didn't appreciate your words as much. And then now, moving forward, now where we're at now, I am so grateful that we have that freedom in some sense to be at peace. And freedom in a sense of just being at peace, that we don't have like this bunch of debt, that things we owe that we have to consistently worry about paying.
Well, we decided to take the debt-free path.
Exactly, yeah. And I feel that's been like a marriage goal together that we've been okay with, and it's helped our marriage because we're not like having arguments, and I'm not overspending the credit card or things like that. Or we're aligned in the sense of like, hey, like let's just go to the beach today. We don't need to like go to this super big water park, And the kids are just as happy.
Well, I give this example to people that have different mentality or that try to find a financial peace in a different way, which is, acceptable and, to each their own. But sometimes the argument is, hey, I want to be able to do a lot of things with my kids. And if I start tackling down debt and paying all this stuff that I owe and letting go of this or not go on vacation until we get out of debt, then I'm going to miss this time with my kids to do fun things with them when they're little. And that is a very common argument. And yeah, that's true. You're going to miss out on going to a lot of places. But my response is always, hey, kids need you. Kids don't need toys. Kids need to play. And if you're out there with them running around, throwing the football, playing soccer, playing with the water hose. I mean, just today you mentioned to me, and I saw this yesterday too, the kids were in the backyard and all they had was a sand pit and a water hose. And they were so happy.
Well, the funny thing was that we had saved up to buy them the big slide.
The water slide.
The water slide. And it was like a big one. And they had that for a few weeks. And that was very helpful after the baby was born. And they were so entertained in the backyard with that. But the funny thing is that they were getting kind of bored of that, which it wasn't that cheap to buy that water slide.
No, it was upsetting.
And they did love it and they used it a lot for like a few weeks. But all of a sudden they were kind of getting like bored of it. And then this last week they've just been out there in the sand pit and just with the water hose having a blast. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, they're like, oh, it's okay. We're having so much fun with the water hose. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's just little things like that. But every family is different. I think you have to discern. But I think for us, it's like we prefer time versus time is more valuable.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's the ultimate goal that we dream of. Like that's our dream, that we can keep learning and growing and each time maybe have more time together with the kids.
well, talking about dreaming, I think what it comes down to is I value my sleep a lot. You know, when I put my head on the pillow, you know, those 7 to 8 hours are very important to me. I love my time at night when it's just, you know, dark and my eyes are closed and I don't feel anything. You know, I'm sleeping. And I value that very much. And if I have to give up some things so that we can have a peaceful night, then I will. Because ultimately it has brought us so much joy. The things we let go of a lot of things, and we don't have to go into detail with the things that we had to let go of, but it was painful. It was very painful, and we didn't know what was on the other side, but we decided to let go of them so that we can have the financial stability. And now that we look back, I think that we can both agree we would never go back to the way we were living.
And by financial stability doesn't mean like we're like, we're still like learning how to.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're rich or
Exactly.
super wealthy. All I'm saying is that we have the peace.
But we have peace, yeah.
Yeah,
And
because I am, you homeschool the kids, and we're a single income family, so our budget is still going to be tight. It's still going to be tight.
Which a lot of moms sometimes think that homeschool moms are like, oh, they're lucky because they get to be at home, but not necessarily. It's actually a lot of sacrifices that you give up to be at home. Or I think for what season we had one car.
Yeah.
And we would just drive around with one car, which we ended up enjoying that season a lot because we'd just always be together.
Yeah, that didn't bother me.
And it was just fun for us. But
I mean, the only reason why I got a second car now is because of work. Because I have to leave the house more now. But in reality, one car was enough for us. And it never, now that I think about it, it never bothered me to have one car. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah. In the season that you had more flexibility with work, it was good. But
anyway, so kind of wrapping up the money or the financial part of the conversation, I think that we can both say that being on the same page financially, regardless, again, whatever financial peace means to someone, if we took a certain path, a specific path of being debt free and just trying to live a life like that, and even if it has to be a more simpler life, that's the path that we decided to take. But ultimately, it's about being on the same page, having common goals, talking about everything that you're doing, because ultimately you are married. It's not like you have a roommate.
And sorry to interrupt, my love, but I think that's also our perspective and what we want to share with others, if it may help anyone, because of the hard season we went through. Like it to go through challenges and financial crisis, and maybe like you never know when a family member, one of the two, gets sick or something, and then you have this overload of bills or things that need to be paid, and that is just a weight off.
Yeah.
In a crisis.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, you do things the way you want to do them, and there's a time to argue and to say what I like to say about things that I'm not in favor of when it comes to finances that I've learned. But ultimately, this is kind of like my approach. If somebody comes at me with a financial decision that they've made, are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. Oh, good for you. Now, if you come and you ask me, hey, what do you think I should do? I would give you, I'm not going to give you advice, but I'm going to talk to you about my experience. Hey, this is what I did, and it drove me to the ground, and it scarred me for life. So if I woke up in your shoes, no, I would not do that. And that's what it comes down to. But
Yeah. I think Dave Ramsey also offers like how to teach the kids like
everything.
how to
They
live
have everything, and I'm so grateful.
Finances. That
Yeah.
would be really cool to check out.
I'm so grateful for people like that. You know, that it has been a blessing in our lives, and I'm so thankful that we got to listen to the message. Even we had to go through a difficult situation to understand. But I'm just grateful that we were able to come out of it. And now that we're on the other side, we've learned, again, going back to what we were saying, what is the situation going here to teach me? And how is my life or my marriage or my family going to look like on the other side of this? And I use that as a big motivator to get me through the problem.
And it's been pretty cool because we've met several families now that like we've heard that done Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like cool and inspiring because you realize, okay, this isn't that crazy. We're not the only ones.
And your dad was into Dave
And then
Ramsey.
my dad was into Dave Ramsey.
He was the first one.
He was the first one, yeah.
He was the first one that talked to me about it. And this was before 2020 when my friend talked to me about it. But your dad one day said, hey, let me just kind of like teach you something about money. You know, I listened to this guy and this is what he said. And he asked me, at that time I felt a little bit uncomfortable because he asked me about like my income and everything.
Well, he followed Dave Ramsey, I think when Dave Ramsey wasn't even like known, because I found his book in his library.
Very old book.
And it's like an old book of Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, so he sat down next to me and he asked me everything and he told me like what to do and how to budget. And I thought he was kind of crazy. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And I kept doing things my way. But he was one of the first ones he was the first one that talked to me about it. And so I know you mentioned him passing. A couple months before he passed, and you told him how we were living our lives when it comes to finances, and he was so proud. You know, he was like, hey, buying things cash. If you can afford it with cash, good. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm proud of you guys for doing that. So that was very meaningful to me.
Now, in regards to like what you were saying at the beginning, though, I think it is something that has to have some sort of discernment in depending on your vocation. Like for us, it's family, right? Being a husband and a wife and then having children. But I think you have to probably discern it because I know that there's people that have different missions and somehow the Lord provides. And that's a whole other story. Well,
it goes by callings.
Yeah.
It goes by callings. Depending on the mission he's calling you to, he will provide.
Yeah, I hear stories from some friends too that the Lord somehow just gives them exactly what they need.
But as we made the decision, our financial decision to be on the same page and living a debt-free life, we felt God's support in every aspect.
Yeah.
In every step of the way. Mm-hmm. And someone who relies on, fully on the generosity of other people, I know that, if they felt the calling, God's calling, then he's going to be with them every step of the way. So yes, I agree. With everyone and every family is going to be different. There are certain things that I think I wouldn't negotiate at any point. I've learned, I try to kind of put this in my head as a response, immediate response. I don't borrow money. There's it really helps me at a point where a really good opportunity comes around, but it's like, hey, but I would have to just borrow this amount so that later I can make this amount. I go back to that. I don't borrow money. It's the way that got me through a really hard situation in my life that scarred me forever. And now I enjoy a peace that I never thought I could experience, not just in my life, but in our marriage. And I'm just so thankful to God.
Well, maybe like it's not necessarily, if you look at it like from a different perspective, it's not necessarily being free with money. It's just being free and having peace. You know, just living a simple life in that sense of not having the stress of producing, and then paying a million things, and just living within what God keeps
within your
giving
means.
us and within our means.
Yeah, spend less. I forget what the expression is. Spend less than what you make. Live on less than you make.
Yes.
And that's common sense, but we forget. So, anyways, so finances, huge, and it could really hurt your marriage. So the sooner.
I think finances has to go along with religion.
Well, of course. Well, that's our second.
I would say religion is so much bigger or faith, right? Because it's just we can't do anything without God, in my opinion.
Well, just think about the decisions that we're going to make with our kids. How difficult those decisions are going to be if we are not on the same page when it comes to faith. If one of us doesn't believe or just believes a totally different thing, then the upbringing of the kids is just going to be misled and confusing.
It's going to be very hard.
And when you have an intimate relationship with God, then everything gravitates around that. Everything that you do is going to gravitate around your relationship with God. Everything that you do, everything that you say yes and no to. And if your spouse is not on the same page, then it's not just any disagreement. It's a disagreement that it's really making you question whether or not you're with the right person, because now we're having an argument about something that's really close to my heart, that I know that it's a sin, or that I know that God really wouldn't be okay with that, and you're okay with that and I'm not, then those problems are really going to deteriorate your marriage.
And we know that God is a merciful God. He's a loving God, and the grace of God is beyond us. And that if you're in a situation in a marriage where it is like this and your faith is not aligned, then not to lose hope, because there's nothing impossible for God. And not all marriages start that way, but there are very many testimonies of marriages that do have those transformations. But it's still such a hard journey to get there if we're not aligned, because that is marriage. When we did the sacrament of marriage and we said yes to God, it was that surrender, right? Because the other day priest told us faith is surrender. It's not praying, it's not all this. Prayer is important, but reality, faith is surrender. And I love that, because it's true. Like, if you really think about it, that is the point. In our marriage, we surrender to each other, we become one. And if you're doing that by the church and beyond the blessing of God, that means you're becoming one. And if we're going to be raising children and we're like thinking different, that's going to be so hard.
Yeah, and the idea with both subjects that we're talking about is not to lose hope or to think that because you're not on the same page, then you're going to fail, but rather this is the time to talk about it, to start the conversation. If you're not on the same page when it comes to finances, if you're not on the same page when it comes to faith, then this is a good time to bring it up, because if it's not causing problems now, it will. So it's not to lose hope, but rather have hope in our relationship. Hey, let's talk about this because it's important. I know this is, I know I met you, and this is
How we met,
this is how
yeah.
we met, and we got married. But you know, you're married, you got God blessing, you got God's blessing. So time to work on your marriage. Like you said, it's marriage is what it's about. It's me working on myself, and then working on you, so that I can I can say, hey, I did everything that I could to make my wife a better version of herself. I did everything that I could so that my wife and my kids could always be what God created them to be.
And
So,
we're not really taught this, but our marriage is to help the other person get to heaven, right? So I'm here to make sure that you're growing in your relationship with Christ, and you're here to make sure that I'm growing in my relationship with Christ.
right.
And then together we're gonna disciple and plant the seed into, that seed into our children, so that they can grow a relationship in Christ and go out to the world and be God's instruments, right? So if that's not happening, then the purpose is not really being, that mission of family is not really being fulfilled, of the marriage. So when we were younger, we were never taught these things. These are things that we were learning as we grow and as we go. And now we have the opportunity to teach our children. Like, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, that a Catholic podcast, and they were sharing that our children, you should be patient in finding that person that you're going to marry. And it might be hard, but God has someone for us that if that's our vocation, then our children are gonna have that person that aligns with their faith that God created for them, and teaching them that to wait. We have that hope that we can teach them that. I have that hope, because I never knew that. Unfortunately, you didn't know that, unfortunately, but now that we know, now that we're not blinded by that and we're learning, we can teach them that marriage there's a purpose for it. Dating has a different purpose than what the world is showing us that dating is.
Going back to having hope in the other person, especially if you're married to them, a dynamic Catholic has this clear mission or mission statement. They say, our mission is to meet people where they are and lead them to where God is calling them to be. And I kept that in my heart, because that is my goal with myself and with you and with my kids. And if God puts someone in front of me to lead, then that's the mentality that I need to have. My mission is to meet them where they are. Maybe they don't know God. Maybe they were never taught anything about faith and Jesus. They don't know anything about that. So my job is to, if God puts them in front of me, is to meet them where they are and lead them. That's a key word. Lead them to where God is calling them to be. So in a relationship, in a marriage, if you have these differences in beliefs, then that's a good way to start. Rather than, you mentioned at the beginning with the finances that you were an Amazon shopper and it was really hard for you to get on board. Well, my approach wasn't the best. I came to you and I'm like, oh, hey, we're going to sell everything. And you're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're going to sell everything. You can't spend any money on Amazon. We're not going on vacation. We're not doing anything. And it's like, oh, hey, no, that's not doing that, And usually that's what happens. But then you go through the whole cycle of arguing as to why, and then you come down to a conversation of, hey, I'm scared. We have so much debt, and we have we don't have enough income and I'm really scared I'm losing sleep. I need to do something. And then you are like, hey, so what are the steps that we need to take so that we can have peace? Same thing with the faith. Rather than approaching the other person like, hey, this is what I believe in, and you're gonna have to start believing the same exact thing. And the response is going to be like, hey, no, it's the wrong approach. But starting a conversation more like, hey, I know that this is a problem that could really hurt our marriage. It may not be hurting it now, or it may be. And if it's not, it could hurt it in the future. So I want to address it now because I'm scared. I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to lose this beautiful family. So I think it's important that we talk about what I believe and what you believe and where God is calling us to be as a marriage. I think that would be the right approach.
Yeah, and knowing that a wife or a husband has a lot of power to pray for their spouse. So I would say prayer, lots of prayer, and maybe seeking spiritual guidance. But it can be challenging, and I think that's why, if possible, the couple should really discern where they are in faith together. But if they're already married, then definitely praying and
working on it. I mean,
yeah, and married, then now if the other person doesn't want to work on it, then that's where I think like it gets really hard.
Yeah. Well, I think that's when you seek help.
Yeah.
I think that's when you seek help. So we did it, and it worked great for us. In things, in subjects, and in areas that we can't do it on our own, we've sought help in our faith, in our community.
In the Catholic Church, there's tons of opportunities. You just have to, ask around, and you'll definitely find help and loving, kind people that want to pray over your marriage.
Yeah.
And help.
Yeah. So, I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, I think that was a good chat.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here. I think some of the slides are going to start turning off because they're on battery operated. So, thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you next time.